Hi, everyone. Thank you for being there for this last talk of the day. I believe you are quite tired, and there's the party after that. But keep a bit of energy for this last presentation, please. We talk about Compose and Koin today. While last people are entering the room, just in the attendees here, who is using Koin here? Just, can you raise your hand? Yeah, that's lots of people. Who is using Koin and Compose? A bit less. Still need a bit of migration. But this talk perhaps will give you some clues about how you can migrate and what's the impact about Jetpack Compose and how you can make dependency injection. My name is Arnaud Giuliani. I'm the main maintainer of the Koin project. I'm a Google developer expert and also co-founder of Codzilla company. And let's talk about Compose. And perhaps one of the famous first snippet code that you have seen is really the launch of the new UI toolkit from Android, which is really the new way, the new declarative UI approach, and everything is Kotlin. That's great. And behind that, what does it mean? It means that you can write Kotlin functions to declare all your UI, less UI plumbing, clearly, and you need a bit of plumbing, but clearly it's making our life easier for that. And everything is compatible with your existing API. And I believe you are kind of, yeah, that's great. That's a new tool that's super cool to do. But behind that, there is something. There's a new paradigm. There's a new way to think about this library, this way to make UI. And this is about UI reacting to events and states. If you look at Google documentation, it's about this schema where, yeah, you have to take the habit to write your UI structure in terms of widget, in terms of data, and then understanding what kind of events are going back from that. And then there's a new way to see that and organize. Also, in terms of architecture, it's clearly pushing us in a way that is more interesting and clearly making us more in a way to make this unidirectional data flow approach. That means that a view is only rendered and triggers action. Those actions are triggering a new state, and those new states are rendering as a UI. That's cool. And this is really a good pattern, and a pattern that is already adopted widely in the web and is used on iOS and now on Android since some months ago. And this is the question of today. What's the impact of that on my application, and more about how you inject your architecture stuff. Let's go with the first topic about the old good DI in Android. And I have a first good news for you. The good news is, yeah, it's still an Android app. And you may know this. It's perhaps one of the first diagrams that make you nightmares at the beginning when you are developing in Android, but you know it. You know how it behaves, its activity lifecycle, then, yeah. We know how to wire these Android components around this lifecycle. And that's cool, because finally we can sum up this as this diagram. We have those UI elements. We have presenters, we have view model, and all of this is behaving in the same life cycle. All of this is behaving in the same way, and the opposite of that is all those long-living components, like services, like repository, like all the kind of helpers that can stay in your app for more than the UI lifecycle. And you have UI lifecycle stuff, and you have singletons that you can keep for you in memory. More or less, this is what you can have in memory for you to have the kind of schema to make your design. With Koin, finally, you see that you can map that directly. And for Koin, you will declare those kind of layer components directly with single instance, singletons, okay? All the presentation layer, you will use factory, view model, okay? And on the Android UI, whether you can use the Koin API, the famous by inject or by view model function that you can use on those components. Good news is that if you are using fragment, you are not forced to use the by inject, and you can use the constructor injection. That means that your fragment comes with constructor injected dependencies. And soon we will be able also to make the same things on activity and other kind of app component stuff, which will reduce your usage of by inject and then really embrace completely the good practice of having dependency injection by constructor. For those who want to use business logic rules and try to use case, interactor, whatever clean architecture approach with this kind of layers, you can also use a factory or single, whatever you want, if you want stateless or stateful components, to declare this kind of layer. This is the really classical pattern and classical way to map your architecture with Koin and to declare your instance and then use them as well in your application. And in the end, also, for those who want to live dangerously, there is the custom scopes and all the kinds of exotic scope way to use Koin also, but not needed, really. In the end, you can just tell me, hey, finally, it doesn't really impact anything, no? Yes, but we didn't solve two things. We have a Compose API, and yeah, here you have to do something else. We can't use directly the API, you know. And also, what do we do with the presentation layer? What kind of presenters, view model, stakeholder, whatever injection we need here? Let's go inside that. Let's try to understand a bit more about Compose, okay? All of this, is it just a function? Okay, why not? One of the first questions I had in mind is, do I need to make functional programming with that? Because really, I'm not prepared. Really, I'm making mobile apps. I don't want to dive into complex stuff. And is there another life cycle to run? Do you really know what's behind these functions and how it behaves, and then what's the impact on everything? And do we add something more complex than activity, fragment, and whatever life cycle? And in mind, you just have one keyword, is recomposition. Recomposition is the fact that your composable element will be triggered, and then the system will try to recompose and then redraw if needed for your UI. And this is all the essence, all the core meanings of Jetpack Compose. And finally, how does this is recomposing? Recomposition is triggered when your inputs are changing. And recomposition is triggered when the core state of your composable is changed also. Then this is a few clues about how it can trigger composition. It could trigger things that rebuild your architecture, rebuild your application, rebuild components, but you don't want. And then how does it behave with dependency injection with composable? Let's take a quick example here. It's a click counter composable. You see here the function signature is just clicks. We passed a number of clicks, and we have an on-click function where we want to click back and then click to increment the number of clicks on this function. And then here we are printing the number of clicks, and we are using the click on the on-click function here. Really something basic, and this is one of the most basic components that you have here. Okay, how do you make dependency injection with that? The first really intuitive way is that you have a new argument, okay? Just a function argument, right? But you can use also default value. That means that this argument, you can pass a value manually. Either if you don't want to pass a value by yourself, then Kotlin will bring you the default value we have here. The other way to do that is to have your value inside the body of your function. Either the function parameter, either in your function body then. And then it's a classical variable line in here. And the good question, parameter of value. What do you use? What do you need here? This question can be answered partly, and there's good content on the Google documentation about that, about hoisting state, and where do you need and when do you need to extract those components or to put them as parameter or as a value inside your composable. But we will come on that later. I propose now to inject this with Koin. Koin Compose API is already ready to be used. You just need to use the Koin Android Compose package. It's already in version 3.4.5. And there's also the Android Compose navigation package for those who are using navigation features. And then you have everything you need to inject inside a composable. Then let's inject into our composable click counter. Let's go back here, okay? Let's take our click counter. And you see here we are using the Koin platform API to retrieve the default Koin context here, okay? Say Koin platform.getCoin and get my factory. My factory is a factory instance we would like to inject. And what you are seeing here is that finally, each time we try to recompose, even if the state doesn't really change for this injection, then we are recalculating, we are recomputing a dependency. It's not something perhaps we won't like here. To change this, we have a special keyword called Koin Inject that finally is using the caching of your composable. That means that your compose isn't trigger recomposition, then we hold the cache of your instance. And then your factory is hold for this instance of your composable. You see, in the UI sample here, you can click on it, and then you still have the same instance, which is interesting. And then also, it will be dropped. That means that if your composable is completely hidden or dropped by the system, then we will drop also the instance that be attached to it. Then this is a good thing that naturally with the compose system, we can attach an instance of any kind of object directly to your composable, and then it will hold for your composable as long as it's been displayed for that. You can use directly also your parameter, your injection inside a parameter, and you can use this default value with the Koin inject parameter here. What is interesting is that if you are reusing this composable function, then either you use the default Koin instance, you don't expect anything, either you can manually give the instance you need. Then you are not hardly linking to Koin, but yeah, you can provide your own instance if you want. If you want to trigger recomposition of your injection, for example, to regenerate an instance of what you have injected before, you have to link your dependencies, your Koin inject usage with a state object, like an input or something related to the state of compose. And then here, for example, we are passing a parameter, a dynamic parameter to our injection. This is what we have behind the parameters of expression. Then we pass the number of clicks to say, hey, Koin generates me a new instance depending on the number of clicks. And then we are triggering a new recomposition because then we are recomposing over the state of clicks, and then it updates directly or updates for the My Factory instance. You see, this is the key point to understand in terms of composition, recomposition, and how finally everything is cached for you directly. If you are using view model, you will see it's not far away from that. The keyword in Koin is Koin view model, and then you will inject the Koin view, the view model, and it will bound to the underlying activity that you are using it or fragment. There is no lazy expression here, okay? Because usually in Android we are using by view model or stuff like that, but here directly we are using the equals Koin view model, and that it triggered directly the creation of the instance and retrieve your Koin view model here. Of course, you can use this view model instance inside the body of your function, and then that's it. If you are using navigation data and you want to use the navigation stack inside your view model, then you can use the Koin nav view model. Sorry, it's a bit complex, but need to bind all the kind of concept you have here. Then Koin nav view model, it's about the view model that are bind to the navigation stack here. And then we have our elements, then the basic layers, our factory, our view model, then we inject inside the instance, and then we have the Koin Compose API. Then you have the big picture on how you can design your Compose application with Koin. And this is the question, view model or not? I believe there's a big debate about that, about do you really need a view model or not? Because finally, view model are big stuff, but it's surviving to all this refreshing screen and stuff, and to configuration change, etc., etc. And there is two kind of things that you can see in the documentation. There is kind of state holder when you are gathering about logic about your state of your components. Either you have a screen level state, a view model, the view model component for that. But globally, the more away you will be away from your UI, more abstraction you will have, and more you will have testability for that. It's the general trick that we give away each time is be away from the UI, please, to be able to test and to test it. There is a Koin application composable function to let run a Koin context. For example, we have our composable here that is running the click counter, and what you can do is just run Koin application, and you can specify the configuration of your Koin application. That's cool because then you can define here directly the context of your Koin application, and even more, we can trigger a preview easily with that. That means that instead of having to rebuild completely all your configuration for preview, because, for example, you are making a preview on a component that is using a view model, you can bind it directly with the Koin application instance and say, okay, this is just a test module to help me preview this view model. And it's quite easy to set up and help you to avoid to have the overall complete configuration inside. There is a few experimental APIs. And one of them is the ability to load and unload modules from a composable. For example, on our super famous click counter composable, what we can do here for this app composable is that we can use remember Koin modules. That means that when we activate this composable for the first time, we can create and load your modules for you directly on the fly, which is quite interesting because then you can really design an architecture in a dynamic way directly all for this particular screen or part of this application. You can also unload part of the memory for those modules that you don't want to use anymore, for example. Okay, now it's time to go for more in details application here, and one of them I like to play with is now in Android. The Google team has published lots of guidelines for the modern Android development, and what means modern Android development? It means that you are using Kotlin, you are using those tooling, those modern tooling, also all the Jetpack libraries and Jetpack Compose. And this is what they call the entire set of skills about modern Android application, development application. And there's a part of their application samples they made now in Android that is a complete executable application that is gathering best practices for design and development, which is really great because it's super complete and then it's super dense. Also, as just a sample, it's really lots of files about theming, about designing with Compose, etc., etc. What I propose you is to have this guide, but for Koin. Like the original now in Android content was around Dagger Hilt, and then I made easily a migration for Koin, and then I will demonstrate for you what kind of configuration you need for that kind of components. All the content, I will be super quick around the content. I won't go into details about all the components, but I made 4 articles about that, about using Koin and Koin annotation, about how you can write the same now in Android application, but with Koin. And we made, at Codezilla, we gathered all those articles inside a white paper of 30 pages about all the details on everything. Then if you want, you can just take photo of the QR code. And it's gathering all of this if you want to dive into more details after the conference. Then it's time to go inside some code. And this is now in Android. Now in Android, it's a application about news, about topics, about you can think about the kind of topic you want to read, and then save some topics for you and follow, for example, architecture, follow accessibility, follow some authors, and then you can receive directly the news and read them, and you can save them. Then there's 3-tab application, not super complex, but already lots of content to play with and some really interesting patterns to deal with, like offline repository, offline data sources, etc., etc. And this is the beginning of the architecture. You see, we can dive into really lots of complex stuff, and you have all the common modules here that are gathering the data, the model, database, network features, etc. Some features modules. Okay, you have all the bookmarks, authors. There's the 3 main tabs here in the UI, and of course there is a module for background synchronization that is using Work Manager to try to prefetch content, and after that the main application that is loading everything and running the application. Online, if you go on the Google GitHub about now in Android, the documentation is quite complete about, and the documentation is really complete about what module is doing what and what kind of components you can find in each module and each responsibility for that. Then for me, the work was super easy then to migrate this because it was migrating Dagger configuration and change it quickly for Koin configuration. One of the questions I have also is, do I demonstrate this for you with annotations or DSL? Because Koin offers now 2 ways to work. It allows 2 kind of developer experience, from the DSL that is super quick to the annotations, where it's really another way to work, but it's really super interesting also. Let's dive first with a bit of DSL, and I will show you about how we can configure those components quickly. And we will end up with the features modules and the pattern and how now in Android has been configured to demonstrate those patterns with Google. Common data components. Then all the common layers it's a regular way to deal with that. You have all the database, the data store, networking, coroutine, dispatchers, and everything. Then this is the usual common components that you can find in many applications. Okay, let's dive into it. And what we need first is to define a database instance. Then what we use here is the Room API builder to create an NIA database instance. And this NIA database instance is reused on the other modules to use Room database to create DAO for that. Then quickly you see that we just need to retrieve the expression that we need to retrieve the needed instance, get NIA database, and then .author DAO or topic DAO, this is Room. We are using Room, the Room API, but then we create the instance, and then we can reuse the instance directly to use the DAO there. First, database layer. Then after that, it's the data store layer where we need a user preferences serializer. And then the same, we are using this user preference serializer and our coroutine dispatcher scope directly to create an instance of data store that will be used in one of the data sources that we have here. And you see it's big block of lines, but we are directly using the API directly because it's Kotlin expression. Koin allows you to use directly the Kotlin expression. And finally, you see one of the improvement, the latest improvement in Koin is we don't have any get or stuff. We can just say single auth and the class that we would like to create. And we are creating an instance and NIA preference data source that really abstract everything to have preference data source to store everything for offline content. And we have a bunch of other stuff like JSON instance. For example, if you have a serializer, you can just create an instance of JSON like that. After that, we have data sources where we are also using JSON, Android context, and at the end, if you are using a dispatcher inside your DI, this is the way you can do. You can just define the default dispatcher instance, and for example, on test, you can override this instance and say, okay, it's in dispatcher dot test or everything else. You can override easily, and you don't have to mention anything else complex for that. And then, finally, we have everything for our data module and all the repository. You see that we just say single auth the repository, the instance of the class that we create, and bind the interface we would like to bind. It's really direct, and then we have all the elements. Then, for example, for the offline first topic repository, the repository that is dealing with all the topics, then we have the DAO, we have the NIA network data sources, and then for the fake NIA network data source, we have all the elements. I went super fast. If you want to go into more details and take time to deal with that, I advise to take a read in the white paper. In terms of module linking, lastly, we introduce also includes and the fact that we can include any kind of modules, and Koin is dealing and optimizing all your graph for that. Then you can include whatever you want in chain and then reuse components over the time, and no problem for that. This is really classic, but it's with the latest usage of Koin and the latest way to use Koin if you are using Koin configuration. In terms of annotation, just to make you a parallel between those two usage and kind of usage of the same Koin system, we are using, for example, the DAOs, and then what we need is a class module, and then we tag it module, and then we can say includes if we need another includes. And you see that here, for example, we are writing 3 functions to try to reuse the NIA database instance directly, and then we say equals, and then we can write any kind of Kotlin expression here. That means that you see, we just tag the function with Tinger to describe a singleton instance in Koin, and then directly we have the description, you have the definition of your instance. On the other side, the same way, we have a description of the database instance, and you see that, for example, if we use the context, the Android context in parameter, then we can use directly this parameter inside our expression and then use the ROM API. And you see annotation experience is also really viewed as to be super fast, super small to write, and really don't bother you about the complexity to think about something else. Just make your instance, link them, and that's it. And finally, all the data module that we have, all the repository, what you can do directly with the annotation is tagging with an at module, and then we have an annotation that says component scan, and you scan for a given repository. Of course, you can include things, but then in this package, the class that you would like to declare inside the module, we have a written component scan. We just say add single, and that's it. We can detect all your parameters in constructor. We can detect all the bound interfaces and types, and we can make it automatically everything for you. Okay, you've seen how we made the common components to have offline data sources for repository, data sources, database, data store, and then those data we are storing articles for the user. We also have some use case, which is interesting because then also the Google team decided to illustrate the way how we can make use case. That means gathering one class about some usage, and what we have do here for the business case, we just tag them at factory, and that's it. The meaning here is that we want them to be stateless. That means that we drop the instance of this component when the view model or the UI is dropped also. Then we don't want to maintain any kind of state with those classes inside. We are almost at the end because we are reaching the feature, the feature API. And for example, we have a bookmark view model to store all the bookmarks. And what you just have to do is use add Koin view model on it. And yeah, it's been declared in your components. And you see in the composable, finally, and this is the main pattern that Google used for this now in Android application demonstration. Then finally, they are using the screen level state. That means that they are injecting the view model at the highest level, and then they are bringing everything to the needed composable. And then for the view model instance injection, and then they are extracting state to collect, and then also passing those states and then actions. Instead of passing directly the view model inside the composable, we pass a pointer, a function pointer directly to the function that we would like to trigger inside the view model. It's a way, as I said, it's a way to abstract yourself from the UI and the view model to avoid to have to recreate the view model and everything each time you would like to work with this composable. Another case, which is clearly more filled with components. Again, we are using Koin view model, and again, and you see that the screen is clearly bigger here. The for you is the screen where we are delivering all the stuff for you. Is we inject with Koin view model, and then we pass all the collected state flow directly inside the composable screen, and then we pass the actions to trigger from this composable. Lastly, the application is using Work Manager API to load some, to preload content in background, and then you can use that with Koin and Redux Work Manager. And what does it mean is that it gives you access to this function for your Koin configuration startup, Work Manager Factory. And then inside the application, we are triggering the synchronization of the background job. And then we can unqueue a job worker here, and then we are triggering our sync worker component directly. And the only thing you have to do here after that, after just the worker factory, and then asking the work manager to unqueue some work, is just add Koin worker, and that's it. You're done. Lastly, there is a few testing API for you if you want to verify your configuration before going live in production with your application. And there is one API that is called Verify and Android Verify, and you take your module instance, you take your module and just call it Verify on it. You execute it inside a JUnit, and then it will run all verification on your configuration. And then you're safe. Let's say it will cover 80% of your usage. Some of the API builder expression are not yet fully covered. All of this, you can find it inside those Now in Android articles, and inside you can have all the paper inside the PDF you have here on the Codzilla blog. And I'm almost done. I have one last thing, Yeah, because finally this is the new thing that is appearing, and I believe you've seen the announcement of Compose multi-platform for iOS, and this is really a great thing. And we really see how Kotlin multi-platform is bringing this UI declarative pattern to the multi-platform side. And then, yeah, it's super great. And Koin is ready. And if you want to make multi-platform, of course, but Compose multi-platform app with Koin, then you can just use the Koin Compose package, version 1.0.3, and then you're done. And you have the same API as you've seen before, except the view model one, and then you can play with your Compose application. What's next? Just a bit of last things, the roadmap, and we are currently in Koin 3.4, and then it has been released, and we have released experimental Kotlin engines for the background loading, for those who have lots and lots and lots of modules to load at start. Koin orientation 1.2, Compose 1.0. If you want to play with some tutorials like a multi-platform project or annotation project, feel free to pick one of the tutorials. It's around 5 to 10 minutes to play with, and you just check in and you can run with that. Everything for Koin is community-driven, and it's open source fueled, and it's super important for me and for us to make things really better together. And since more than 6 years, everything is really built together with the community, bringing more use case every day about what we can do with Koin. And yeah, this is the contributor you have currently. You can find them on GitHub. Also, this is all the community channels if you want to reach the Koin community. At Codzilla, we are providing some support to help you about architecture, about Koin usage. And we are also launching our cloud development platform around Koin and software engineering for architecture. And if you want to see more about Cloud Inject, our new platform, then come talk with us at our booth. And we have also some goodies to give you. And also with you, my friend is here, and she can give you away some cheat sheets, paper cheat sheets for you. I'm right on time. If you have any question, I can take them off-site. And thank you very much for your attention.